during week 234 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. My takeaways from what was a very insightful and interesting conversation with Tim Lester at his recent media availability in Iowa City. Also, some notes from what Kirk Ferentz said about the Lester hire. I am much more positive about where this offense is in the hands of Tim Lester than I was when the announcement was initially made. I'll explain why. Also, an exclusive interview with incoming linebacker Derek Weisskoff. We've been talking about linebackers this week because Seth Wallace recently got a raise. He also talked with the media. We also got news that Kyler Fisher would be returning in addition to Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson. So is Derek Weisskoff and a very talented 2024 group of linebackers the answer for the future? We'll talk with Derek coming up during week 234 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Let me introduce you to one of the proud supporters of From the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa floor covering down in Bondurant. Now, for the last year and a half, you've heard me talk about this great company in the heart of central Iowa. They've got their tough core, click together, 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring, great for you DIYers out there. But even if you're just a contractor or you need a different type of flooring, they've got you covered, whether it be tile showers, carpet. Give Iowa Floor Covering a chance to serve you better and serve your flooring needs. Visit them online at iowafloorcovering.com. That's iowafloorcovering.com, or you can give them a call at 515-379-7000. That's 515-379-7000. Thank you to Iowa Floor Covering in Bondurant. Week 234 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. It is once again nice to be able to broadcast and share this podcast with people across the Midwest, hopefully across the world, Hawkeye fans everywhere. Of course, we are in the middle of a very busy basketball season. This show specifically is going to be about football. We, of course, have post-game coverage this evening. If you're watching on Thursday, we've got a doubleheader of Hawkeye hoops, the men and the women hitting the hardwood this evening. We'll have post-game coverage with Coach Gary Close and Hawkeye women's great Kasheen Alexander, so that should be fun. But as it relates to this show, I wanted to kind of fill everybody in on where I stand after the media availability that we had with Beth Getz, Kirk Ferentz, Seth Wallace, and Tim Lester. And I really want to use the next 5 to 10 minutes to focus specifically in on Kirk Ferentz and Tim Lester as it relates to the offensive coordinator hire. Now, I will freely admit that when the hire was initially announced, I had been given intel that gave me the indication that Kevin Johns, the former Duke offensive coordinator, would be the next OC. So I was taken back by the news that Kirk Ferentz was going with Tim Lester. And initially there were rumblings that, hey, it was a financial decision. I was later told that was not accurate information. And of course, when there's rumors swirling and information out there, not all of it's going to be correct. So at the time, I was a little bit let down because I had gotten excited about Kevin Johns, and I had talked about that on this very platform. I will say that over the last couple of weeks, I've tried to really hone in on Tim Lester's resume, the people that have worked with Tim Lester. We've had conversations with Coach Don Patterson, who is good friends with Scott Schaefer, who was head coach at Syracuse when Tim was a part of that staff. And I know we did a live show with a lot of you. We had a call-in show with Coach Patterson. And I'll just say this, I have taken a very different approach over the last week and a half to this hire. And the media availability we got with Tim Lester this week only heightened my enthusiasm and my excitement to see where this offense goes, even though I think a lot of people believe you're going to see a lot of the same stuff as long as Kirk Ferentz is the head coach there. I think there's some truth to that, but I think in large part, I will double down on what I've been saying for the last 3 years, that I think the biggest problem with the offense has been the play caller and the offensive coordinator. They're getting a change and getting a guy who I believe to be very well qualified. A few notes from the media availability on Tuesday. Kirk Ferentz did confirm that he started with about 10 to 12 different candidates on his list for the offensive coordinator role. Now, we know a few of them, right? Joe Philbin, Paul Chryst, Andy Ludwig, of course, Tim Lester, Kevin Johns. Sounds like Chip Kelly was also a part of that list. Now, that leaves a few. We may never know exactly who else was on that list, but Kirk did differentiate between people who were on the initial list and people he had conversations with. He mentioned that he had had conversations with 6 different people and extensive, that's a quote, extensive conversations with 4. So whether that be Johns, Lester, Chryst, and Philbin, or maybe the 4th one was indeed Chip Kelly, we won't know. But that was the final 4. Those were the final 4. And we can confirm, we've talked about this, that Paul Chryst did turn down the Iowa job he was initially offered. And I was let down by that because I thought Paul Chryst was a good candidate given what Kirk Ferentz wanted. But I do think Tim Lester is a little bit more of a roll of the dice in a positive way, perhaps with his knowledge of the RPO and certainly the Shanahan offense, which he's been a part of and was even a part of it this past season up in Green Bay. I think that should make fans excited. Tim did talk on Tuesday about how his main priorities as the offensive coordinator are going to be being disciplined and being aggressive. And I think any Iowa fans can appreciate, even though they're frustrated with the lack of productivity, the lack of downfield passing attack with the Iowa offense in recent years, they appreciate the fact that Iowa values discipline. And Kirk Ferentz made it very clear, as he always does. I'll give him credit. He's very consistent on this, that they are not going to throw the ball around the yard at the expense of turnovers and the expense of turnover margin. They want to protect the football, and that's where it starts. And I totally endorse that idea, that thought. And I think the idea here is a guy like Tim Lester can perhaps bring some more innovative ideas and different experience as it relates to getting the ball in different places, getting the ball into their playmakers' hands without sacrificing the attention to detail as it relates to protecting the football. Kirk Ferentz did talk about some of the similarities that he saw with Tim during the hiring process. And some of the reports that we got when Tim Lester, that news initially came down, some of the reports indicated that Kirk Ferentz was really impressed by Tim Lester during the interview process. And that was what ended up giving him the edge over a guy like Kevin Johns. And I don't know if that says more about Kevin Johns or Tim Lester. I can tell you after listening to Tim Lester on Tuesday, I'm not surprised that he really impressed Kirk Ferentz during the interview process. He is an intelligent guy. He seems like a down-to-earth guy, and he doesn't seem pompous at all. In fact, one thing that I really take away from the media availability is Lester was asked about his plan to either be on the sideline during games or up in the press box. His response indicated that he expects to be up in the press box. Here's his response.
I prefer being up. I like to see the game from up there. I think being an offensive coordinator is about making adjustments. I've called games for a long time. I was a head coach at, I want to say, 24 years old or 25 years old. And so I've called a game where 70 passes. I've called 70 runs in a game. You know, you have to make adjustments as it's happening, you know, because they have a plan too. And so when you're having to think and make adjustments, I just think being in the environment up in the booth is a way better learning environment than sometimes on the sideline where it gets very emotional, you know. So I've always felt better. Now, as the head coach, I had to call him from the sideline. So that guy up in the booth was the most important person in the world to me, that we thought the same way, you know. But if it came to my preference, pretty sure I'll be up.
That might be my biggest takeaway just from the press conference, because, of course, we're not going to be able to see ultimately what this offense is going to look like until we see it on Saturdays, right? I do believe that anybody that's trying to convince you of exactly what this offense is going to look like during the first week of September is just feeding you a lot of baloney, because none of us know what exactly it's going to look like. We're going to see, I mean, a guy like Tim Lester brings a lot of different types of experience to the table, not just with the RPO, a lot of misdirection in the run game from Western Michigan, but he also brings experience with the Shanahan offense over at Elmhurst High School, where he coached, 10, 15 years ago. And then this past year as an analyst at Green Bay, he was working to kind of help the defense understand what the opposing offense was going to be doing and bringing to the table each and every week, kind of a unique role with Green Bay. But I really am impressed with the fact that Lester right away said, hey, I want to be up in the box so I can see the field. And I'm not saying that the primary motivation by Brian Ferentz to be on the sideline was to be front and center and to kind of be different, but it just never really sat very well with me. And Coach John Patterson talked about that. Like, he openly expressed concern about your play caller, your offensive coordinator, being down on the sidelines. And as you heard from Lester, one of the big things that he believes in is in-game adjustments. And it's hard to make in-game adjustments when you can't see everything that's going on down the field, especially as an offensive coordinator and play caller. So discipline, aggression. Lester also brought up the need to get the ball into his wide receivers' hands and figure out different ways to get them the ball. That's been a concern and a failure on the part of this offense for a number of years. Even their best playmakers like Charlie Jones didn't get the ball enough. Tyrone Tracy had a lot of drops, but were there other ways you could get them the ball? His production his senior year at Purdue maybe indicated that, yeah, he was underutilized at Iowa. Same could be said about a young man in Caleb Brown. Now, Iowa will be getting a new wide receivers coach. Will that be John Budmeyer or somebody else? We'll have to wait and see. But fans should be encouraged to hear Tim talking about the need to get those guys the ball, however that may be. Now, he also believes in tight end play. He really buys into Iowa being tight end U. But again, really impressed with his commitment to getting his best players, his playmakers, the football. Kirk did make an interesting quote regarding last year's struggles. Kirk has continued to double down on why they struggled last year. Now, he didn't bring up injuries. Again, we've heard him talk about this over the last couple of seasons, that injuries have really been the primary inhibitor for progression development with the offensive line, with the offense. He was quoted as saying, "It's pretty obvious the reasons why we struggled last year offensively." That's what he said. Now, he didn't, again, name specifically injuries or developmental issues, whatever. But, the implication there is that if Brian were still here, sounds like Kirk believes that the offense would be heading in a similar direction to what it's heading, hopefully, with Tim Lester. Really, it doesn't matter at this point. Kirk can believe in his son for all he wants, but his son is no longer here and will not be here as long as Kirk Ferentz is here. And that was a decision made by the people above Kirk Ferentz. And as I've applauded them before, I'll applaud him again for making that decision. Blood is thicker than water. I don't expect Kirk Ferentz to abandon his loyalty to his son. But the bottom line is, I think him not being given the ability, the ultimate power to keep Brian in place gives him an opportunity to be able to see things from somewhat of an unbiased standpoint with all these different candidates. I believe that he's hired the guy he believes to be in best position to adjust this offense positively. I don't foresee him, for the fans that are scared that he's going to hold the offense hostage, just to be able to double down on his stance that, hey, you can play the way they were playing under Brian, but as long as they stay healthy, they'll produce better numbers. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Tim Lester's coming here to run the same offense that we've seen under Brian Ferentz. I just don't buy into that. Remember, this is just the third offensive coordinator that Iowa has had since Kirk Ferentz took over back in 1999. Mentioned wide receivers coach Kirk did say that they are, quote, on a good path, end quote, to finding the next wide receivers coach. Tom Kakert has talked about that search on this show. He believes it will be John Budmeyer, but we'll just have to see on that. I did ask Kirk Ferentz a question as it relates to where he stands with total offense, because in the past he has touted that as being the most overrated stat in football. That is a quote. And I just thought it was interesting that the press release that announced the hiring of Tim Lester brought up Tim Lester's performances at his previous schools as it relates to total offense. Now, for someone who reached out to me earlier and said, well, why are you even bringing that topic up, Corey? Kirk Ferentz is not the one writing those press releases. Well, those press releases are representative of Kirk Ferentz's decision to hire Tim Lester. So why wouldn't the important criteria to the hire be verbalized in the press release? And I actually think Kirk Ferentz answered the question I asked him quite well. He basically just went back to talking about how he is not buying into the whole flashy offense at the expense of the team. I thought he answered the question well. Talked about coaches who are me first type of coaches. And I did appreciate the fact that at the end of his quote, he brought up that, hey, if we can average over 500 yards of total offense per game and hold our opponent to 150, I'm all in. And that was just refreshing to hear, honestly. And the question was absolutely relevant to the hire of Tim Lester, again, just because of what Kirk has said in the past and explaining the hire of Tim Lester. And keep in mind, Tim Lester's overall record, wins-loss per game at Western Michigan, was pretty good for a while. It wasn't great. And then his last year at Western Michigan, it was the offensive numbers took a big dip, and his record at Syracuse was not great. But again, context matters. So I think that's why it is appropriate that the university is touting his total offensive numbers. And so hopefully that is a point of criteria for evaluating his performance, Tim's performance moving forward, because it doesn't seem like it was at all a point of criteria in evaluating Brian Ferentz over the past 6 to 7 years. So anyways, very interesting stuff. And I thought Kirk answered that effectively. And I am just overall very encouraged by Tim Lester as a person. Everything I've heard about him as a coach, really positive. I know Coach Don Patterson is excited to get this Tim Lester era underway as well. So we'll look forward to seeing what spring ball produces, who else hits the transfer portal, and other news and notes before we hit summer conditioning and then eventually fall camp. As I mentioned earlier, coming up, an exclusive interview with incoming Iowa linebacker Derek Weisskoff, one of several really talented linebackers from the state of Iowa, joins the show to talk about his decision to be a Hawkeye and what he brings to the table for his future in the black and gold. That interview with Derek Weisskoff coming up after this. Straight from the man cave Kinnick under the kitchen, authentic, original player artwork is being drawn up for Hawkeye fans everywhere. Locally made prints of stars wearing the black and gold from the past, present, and future. How about current Hawkeye superstars Cooper DeJean and Torrey Taylor, legends of the past like Jack Campbell, Spencer Lee, and Tim Dwight, plus future phenoms like Aaron Graves. There are so many options available. They make great gifts, and your purchase benefits the Hawkeye athletes wearing the black and gold. Visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook or at Under the Kitchen's new website. That's underthekitchen.square.site. Again, that's underthekitchen.square.site. Check out Under the Kitchen today and get your authentic, original Hawkeye print. Mr. Derek Weisskoff is with us. Derek, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Congratulations on a big day. How does it feel to officially be an Iowa Hawkeye?
I mean, it feels amazing. Just being able to have those papers signed and know that it's official is a great feeling. And I know everyone that signed it is super excited to get there in June, so it'll be a great time.
So, Derek, talk a little bit about your background. You're from Williamsburg, I'm assuming, because you and I have never actually talked formally. I'm assuming you grew up a Hawkeye fan. You're right in the back door of Iowa City. Talk about your upbringing.
So I actually transferred from HLV, a small town in Victor, Iowa. My eighth grade, or going into my freshman year, I transferred to Williamsburg. And ever since I transferred, I mean, Williamsburg brought me in as a family, and the community was a great support. And since then, I mean, just the coaching at Williamsburg and all that helped me get out to all the college coaches and all that stuff, and they helped me be the athlete I am today. So just thanks to them, and just the way that all the colleges reach out to me and all that stuff. And Iowa was definitely the top pick for me the whole time. I mean, it wasn't my first offer, but I mean, I was very high on Iowa this whole time. So I'm happy with my choice, and I'm excited to get there.
How exciting is it for your family there in Williamsburg to be able to be so close to games? I'm assuming they're going to be able to be there each and every week. I mean, not many athletes at Iowa or any university get that opportunity to have their family right in the backyard.
I mean, I think my family's very excited about that. I mean, both sets of my grandparents will be able to be there. I mean, aunts and uncles, I mean, family, friends, and all that. Like, they'll all be able to support me every single home game and all that stuff. And I'm sure my grandparents and parents will travel occasionally to some of my games and stuff. So it'll be great to have that family support at each and every game. And I love that we're so close to the Iowa City.
Give us an idea, Derek, about your recruitment. You mentioned Iowa wasn't the first offer. What other schools were in the running for you? And then after you committed, were there other schools that reached out and tried to pull you?
So it started off with Wisconsin. I was pretty high on Wisconsin. I liked how they ran their defense and all that stuff. And they had some coaching changes, and I'm glad I ended up not picking Wisconsin because Paul Christ ended up leaving, and then the linebacker coach ended up going to Stanford. So I'm glad I didn't end up going there for them because I had a good connection with all of them. But and then I ended up getting offers from Iowa State, Nebraska, just close colleges nearby. And I mean, there was nothing like the Iowa program. I mean, the culture at Iowa, the way they develop their players just as grown, like as men before, I mean, football players is crazy. And I love how Coach Ferentz works his practices and all that stuff. And it was a huge difference once I saw that first practice at in Iowa City. I mean, they're so physical. I mean, they're hitting people, and I love that kind of football. And so I think I'll really fit into the Hawks. So it'll be exciting in the next couple of years.
And Derek, 247 Sports has you as the top-rated kid in this class. How does that feel? Does it you kind of take an ownership, a leadership approach to this group, and how close are you to your peers that have signed?
I mean, I don't really look at the rankings and stuff, but I mean, yeah, recruits that are real close to top ranking with me, like Gavin Hoffman and Cam Buffington, Cody Fox, and all them. I mean, I get along with all of them and visits and stuff. The official visit was super fun with them. and seeing all the recruits. And we had a great official visit. We had a lot of Hawkeyes commit that day and after their official visit. So it was great to see how they got to Iowa City and got to talk to these coaches, and just they actually saw how much Iowa City is like. I mean, this is a cool town, and I mean, the Hawk fans around here is going to support you 100%. So, I mean, I'm glad that we had a bunch of dudes commit after the official visit, and it was a great experience getting to know a lot of new guys.
Talk about the opportunity to play for Seth Wallace. It's amazing the rave reviews that I hear regarding him, not just from players who were recruited by him, but even from Nick Jackson. Talk about that opportunity, not just play for a Royals Award winner in Phil Parker, but linebackers coach Seth Wallace.
I'm super excited to play under him. I mean, he's day one when I met him. I knew this guy was legit. Like, I mean, this dude was this guy is one of the best linebacker coaches in the nation. Like, he's produced so many linebackers, the Neiman brothers, the Josie Jules, I mean, Jack Campbell last year. And I mean, Jay Higgins, I mean, like the way that Jay Higgins has developed over the last couple of years, I mean, I've seen him practice over the last couple of years, and the way that he's like developed and stuff is crazy. And I love that aspect of Iowa and how these coaches can develop players into All-Americans. Like, I mean, Cooper DeJean, for example, like, I mean, he was a small town kid and came in, played special teams, and then worked his way up on the depth chart and started playing. And I mean, look at him now. I mean, he's an All-American. So just the little things that Coach Wallace does at practice and stuff is unbelievable. And he cares about those little things, and he'll get after you. And I love that about him.
Jay Higgins, I mean, what a story. A kid who has stuck it out behind some really talented young guys. And there are some young prospects. We were talking about that before you hopped on with us, Derek. There are some young prospects that have an opportunity to make a name for themselves, including yourself, but Aiden Hall and Ben Keeter, of course, who's an Iowa City native. And I mean, just go down the list. You've got Carson Shire, who's a young guy with a lot of upside. What do you think the next couple of years are going to be like battling with those guys?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we're all going to be competing for the spot, and we're all competitors. So it'll be fun battling for the spot and battling with Cam and Reese or Preston. I mean, I'm good friends with them, and we talk every once in a while and stuff. So it'll be an interesting time and a fun experience. I mean, we all got a lot of work to do to become that that NFL draft pick or that All-American pick and stuff, but I know Coach Wallace can all coach us into close or even those linebackers. So I mean, we'll all buy in and believe that the defense will be good, and Coach Parker and Coach Wallace will get us to where we need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Cam Buffington, another 4-star in this class out of Winfield. And what's your relationship like with Cam?
We talked every once in a while. I mean, we talk on official visits. On an official visit, we talk every game day visit. I mean, we're both there every game, and I just saw him last Sunday at the bowl practice and stuff. So, and just getting to see them and building a relationship with them it's great, because once we get into Iowa City, we're always going to be with each other. And we're always going to need someone to rely on. And I know I can rely on, or like if I need help and stuff, I can rely on either Preston or Cam. So, and they can rely on me. Like, I mean, I'll be there for them too. And especially like the older dudes, like, especially if Jay Higgins comes back and stuff, and like Carson Shire will be there, Jackson Rethroth that I got to know at the official visit, and Ben Keeter and Aiden Hall. I mean, I've known those guys and stuff. So, just being able to get to the program and know that I have people to rely on if I need it is, I mean, it will be a great thing to have and great support.
Derek, are these numbers accurate? Are you still about 6'3", 200?
About 205, 210.
205, 200. We'll round up to 210. And what's your ideal weight?
I mean, As of right now, I mean, I'd like to get to 215 and stuff, but I mean, Iowa really just says do what you have to do. I mean, they're not too worried about my weight, but so I mean, I'd rather stay under and not get too big, so they can put the weight on and they can do it themselves and stuff. So, I mean, I'm happy with what I am right now and stuff. So we'll just keep working.
Absolutely. Derek Weisskoff out of Williamsburg. Congratulations, Derek, on signing a moment that you'll never forget. And looking forward to seeing you, hopefully, for 4 or 5 more years in Iowa City.
Yep. Well, thank you for having me.
Want to, again, extend my thanks to Derek Weisskoff, maybe the top-rated player in this class. Depending on where you look, he is considered to be a 4-star kid. And these Iowa linebackers have ended up playing out pretty well. Now, we haven't seen the career of Aiden Hall play out just yet. But, man, think about Jack Campbell from Iowa. You think about Josie Jewell from Iowa. So it's an interesting position. You wouldn't always necessarily think Iowa produces a ton of linebackers. But, boy, the 2024 class was loaded, and Iowa swept the board as it relates to that class. So hopefully you enjoyed the interview. I know I enjoyed talking with Derek, and we'll see him push a very loaded linebacker room in 2024. Appreciate you tuning in for another edition of Brada's Branded Thoughts here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and if you're on Spotify or Apple, give our podcast a 5-star rating. It does help. Give us a review. It is much appreciated. Till next time, I'm Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We'll talk to you soon.